what are requirements, or what are software requirements? There is a useful saying, you cannot see the forest for the trees. And what is important is that when you gather requirements, you must be able to see the forest, the whole of the system, and not the details. You should not focus on the details, because they are not so relevant at the early stages of software development. There may be some details that might be very relevant, but this is rather very rare. So, what is a requirement for a software system? In engineering, a requirement is a description of what the system should do, and it may range from a very high level abstract statement of a service to a very detailed functional specification. So you have requirements on many levels, and you will see later on how these levels change. What is important with requirements is that it should state what the system should do and not how it should be implemented. There are again very specific cases when you have to consider how the system should be implemented or in what technology it should be implemented. But normally what you should do, you should focus on what is it the system is going to implement, and that's it. And to worry how it is going to be implemented, you may do it later on. This is some truth with modification, and I will come back to that. First of all, we have user requirements. These are on a very high level. They are usually statements in natural language. They may be complemented with diagrams of the services that the system can provide. These user requirements may also state the constraints under which these requirements must operate. So here, for instance, we have one user requirement. It says that the medical system shall generate monthly reports showing the cost of drugs prescribed by each clinic during that month. And of course, you may also provide a graph or a picture of how you wish this report should be structured. So this is typical user requirement, and it is called user requirement because it is provided by the users of the system. But of course, this requirement is on a very high level, and you as a developer, you will need to split it into more detailed requirements. So these requirements that have been specified by the developer, or they may be specified with the customer, together with the customer by the developer, they are then more detailed specifications of user requirements. So here, this user requirement may result in 3 system requirements, like on the last working day of each month, a summary of drugs prescribed, their cost, and the prescribing clinics shall be generated. Or another one, the system shall automatically generate the report for printing after 17:30 on the last working of the month, and so on and so on. We have mainly 2 types of requirements, functional and non-functional. There are also some organizations or books that also identify domain requirements. Domain requirements are not going to be discussed on this course, but they concern both. They may be both functional or non-functional, and they are typical for the domain. If you are developing an aircraft system controller, then of course there may be both functional requirements that are very domain specific, and they may also be non-functional. So let us have a look at functional requirements. Here we have 3 requirements. First one, the user shall be able to search either all of the initial set of databases or select a subset of them. Or the next one, the system shall provide appropriate viewers for the user to read the documents. And the third one. So what is typical here, we have functional requirements for a system. They describe the functionality or services that the system is expected to provide. So these are statements of services that the system should provide. It's not only what the system should provide, how the system should react to particular inputs, How the system should produce particular outputs. We are talking about functionality. We are not talking about how it is to be implemented. It is how the system should react or how it should produce. How the system should behave in particular situations, like for instance when a pilot should react in case of emergencies and in case he pushes several buttons. A functional requirement, also a requirement or a statement of what the system should not do. This is also a requirement. What is important with all these requirements is that they should be consistent and complete, and this is very difficult to achieve. Okay, because we have many problems. We have many problems because we have difficulties in precisely state the requirements. Very often we get ambiguous requirements that may be interpreted in different ways. Just please have a look at requirement 2. It says the system shall provide appropriate viewers for the user to read documents. What does it mean, appropriate viewers? I don't understand. Should they be presented as a graph or as a text or maybe something else? So in practice it is actually impossible to produce a complete and consistent requirement documentation. We have non-functional requirements, and non-functional requirements are not directly concerned with the specific functions delivered by the system, but they define different constraints, or the constraints on the services or functions that are offered by the system. There may be constraints on the organization developing the system, or there may be other constraints on the standards, or etc., etc. Let us have a look at product requirements. We have here non-functional requirements that we have classified as product requirements, organizational requirements, and external requirements. So regarding product requirements, we may have the following non-functional requirements. We may have usability requirements. We may have that is you have created a system, but the system is not usable. It's difficult to use. It's difficult to understand. You may have efficiency requirements, and here you have two types of efficiency, like performance requirements. The system must conduct a certain function within a limited period of time, or the functionality must be squeezed into a specific space. Like when you create software for running mobiles, you have to think of this requirement. It is a very important one. You have reliability requirements. You should make sure that there are no bugs in the system. You may have portability requirements. The system should be portable and be useful on any platform. Non-functional organization requirements. You may have delivery requirements. For instance, a system should be delivered on May 1st and not one day later, because then it's too late. You may have implementation requirements. The system should be implemented in COBOL. This is because all other systems are implemented in COBOL, and even if we have modern languages, we do not worry about it. We want to have this implemented in COBOL, period. You may also have standard requirements. Specific process standards, specific technological standards must be followed. Then we have external requirements, interoperability requirements. Your system will talk to the other systems. It must interoperate with other systems. You must follow ethical requirements. When you develop medical systems or you develop safety critical systems, ethical requirements are very important. And of course legislative requirements, where you have to consider privacy and safety. So you can see non-functional requirements, there are quite many, aren't they? Non-functional requirements, even they may be even more critical than functional requirements, because if they are not met, then the system might be useless. Like for instance, performance. If the system does not react within a limited specified period of time, then you cannot use the system. If you are in the air and you are controlling a flight, you cannot wait for minutes so that the system will react to your input. It must react immediately. So it does not help that you have a fantastic flight controller system when one of the non-functional requirements has not been fulfilled.